So hello everyone. Thank you so much for those that are joining us and coming in. Thank you so much for joining our session, the last session of the day. Or we have one more, I believe, our keynote address, but you've made it this far. So thank you so much for going through the last 3 days with us. My name is Anissa, and I'll be your moderator for this panel today. I'm a CLS Indonesia alumna and a former Fulbright research grantee to Malaysia. So currently I'm based in Singapore, so it's quite early, so please forgive me if my voice seems a little scratchy. But currently I'm in Singapore working as a research and advocacy manager at Stewardship Asia Center. So regardless, I'm really grateful to be here and have the opportunity to hear from all of these amazing panelists and kind of guide the discussion and flow for today. So again, this session, we're going to have a great lineup of speakers calling in from across the US and even the world to share their study abroad stories and how they've navigated the journey of choosing their own program in the APAC region. So just some housekeeping notes for those that are attending. A recorded version of this webinar will be available in 1 to 2 weeks on YouTube. And then if you have any questions throughout the panelists, things may arise, please feel free to put it in the box below. And then any of our panelists or myself will be able to answer directly or try to guide the discussion even more. And if you haven't done so already, please share your thoughts and your experiences about the conference and even this panel specifically on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, using our handle, We Represent 2021. So without further ado, I'll hand it off to our amazing panelists now so that they can introduce themselves a little bit. Jeremiah, could you start us off?
Awesome. Can you all hear me?
Yes, can.
Awesome. Hey everyone, my name is Jeremiah. I did an internship in South Korea for my Gilman Scholarship in 2017. I can get into it later, but in a nutshell, I sort of created my own experience and didn't go through an official program or like a third party or partnership with my university. So I just found an internship in Korea and again, didn't have a formal connection. And so I somehow stumbled upon this internship posting when I was applying and sent in my actual application and used that for my Gilman Scholarship while I was doing online classes at my home university. So I still maintained my student status that way. So I did that internship abroad and then continued my studies virtually by night. And I graduated from Harvard 2 years later. So I'm now just graduated last May. And I am now based in the United Arab Emirates, and I'm in the Foreign Service, which is a fancy way of saying that I'm a diplomat working on the tech side here at the State Department.
Great, thanks so much. And Jeremiah, which program did you do? Just so that everybody knows. Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Thanks. And I'll just throw it to Hannah next to give a brief intro.
Hi, everyone. My name is Hannah. I was a member of the 2019 Malaysia cohort of Fulbright ETAs. I was placed in Miri Sarawak, which is on the island of Borneo. I'm currently in my hometown of Santa Cruz, California, where I'm managing a cafe. I also am a domestic violence advocate for our local Women's Resource Center, and I'm an alum of American University, where I studied sociology and law. I'm excited to meet all of you and get to talk today.
Thanks so much, Hannah. Alexandra.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alexandra. I am a 2020 CLS Indonesian alumna, and I will also be participating again this year, albeit both years were virtual. I'm also a 2020 graduate of Rowan College of South Jersey with a degree in paralegal studies in Spanish. Currently, I'm working as a tutor and disability coach at the same college. And in my free time when I'm not here in New Jersey with my grandma, I am a team member of a local organization called Our Future First, and we just work to improve the education of elementary, middle, and high school students in my hometown. So thank you, everyone, and I look forward to the rest of this panel.
Thanks, Alexandra. Alexis?
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
I am Alexis Reed. I was born and raised in New Orleans. I currently attend the University of New Orleans, and I'm a senior. My program is interdisciplinary studies, where I'm focusing on anthropology, sociology, and political science, but more of the international studies. I participated as a Gilman Scholar in Japan. I did the UNO Japan program. Currently, I'm serving as a board member at the New Orleans Youth Alliance, and I just wrapped up a fellowship with Lee New Orleans. It was for journalism and multimedia. So now I'm a freelance journalist, and so I'm happy to be here.
Great. Thank you so much, Alexis. Sorry, now we have an Alexandra and Alexis. So thank you so much, guys, for introducing yourself. Obviously, we have kind of a really large range of Asia countries and a good representation, I think. So really great to have you here. So you've already kind of touched upon the country that you did your program in. So just wanted to see if you guys could also kind of go into the why this country, and what brought you to Korea, for example, Jeremiah.
Yeah, so I originally wanted to go to, I think it was Ghana or Brazil. One of them was first. But unfortunately, some other funding for those countries didn't pull through. So I applied to the other one. So it was Ghana or Brazil. And then it all just ended up where sort of leaning towards going back to Korea. I had done another study abroad in Korea during my gap years before college. And so I had some idea and some exposure to South Korea already. And so coming back to Korea was a result of sort of multiple essays. I had to rewrite this, rewrite that. I had to submit some more documentation to the Gilman folks. And so this is all to say that to plan early, right? Because you work with the Gilman team months prior. So I did my application in the fall, and my intention was study abroad in the spring. So a couple months passed by in the fall semester, and it ended up where I had to, again, keep submitting more documentation to sort of make a justification for South Korea. And so again, I did my internship, not a study abroad program. I did an actual internship, like a 9-to-5 internship in Korea. So plan early, just so that you can iron out any hiccups before your actual departure.
Yep. Great. And I think that's kind of like key for study abroad, is things will always fall through regardless. So actually, can I throw it to Alexandra just to give us why you chose Indonesian, what brought you there? Also, congratulations for getting CLS a second time. It's definitely a fun program. So
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. So when I heard about the CLS program at my local university, I was researching all the languages and countries, and Indonesia stood out to me because I'm a Filipino American, and I've always been interested in Southeast Asia and the interconnectedness of like the ASEAN countries. And I knew Filipino, and I was just like, well, how can I learn more about the region? Learning Indonesian seemed like the next step. And of course, studying paralegal studies. I was and still am an aspiring immigration paralegal, and I had experience with the immigration system with my Filipino relatives and getting all the paperwork and stuff. So I thought if I could learn Indonesian, I would be able to help the growing population of Indonesian Americans in my area and just be an asset to whatever future workforce or whomever I would work with in the future.
okay, thank you so much. You're among great company. I think Hannah and Jeremiah are also Filipino Americans. Like nodding. Hannah, can you give us a little background of why you chose Malaysia? And maybe it can reflect a little bit of what Alexandra said.
Yeah, definitely. I absolutely connect with that because I selected Malaysia as I'd begun looking at the Southeast Asia region from that like personal interest. My mom immigrated from the Philippines in her 20s and she came to live here. So I've always had an interest there in sort of that like cultural connection for my family. So after exploring looking in the region what was available for the Fulbright ETA program, I was actually taking a graduate course in the School of Education at our school, and it was like diversity and inclusion in training. I think it talked a lot about like cross-cultural pedagogy, sort of the identities that students have and what they bring into the classroom and how that sort of impacts their learning and their place in the classroom. So we ended up talking about various countries in that area, but it came up through Pink Dot. It's actually the annual like Pride rally that happens. It started in Singapore, and then it moved to Malaysia. And it wasn't able really to get off the ground, unfortunately, because they were met with a lot of like anti-LGBT sentiment. But that was how my interest started, and sort of my initial research and reading was on individuals' experiences, especially students. And then I started learning about this like multi-ethnic and multicultural environment in Malaysia, which is really exciting to me. So that's how I sort of got into that.
Great. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think that kind of aspect, especially coming from a background where you have a connection to the region, really kind of pulls you towards Asia as well. So maybe hear from Alexis to talk about why Japan, like what intrigued you about this program.
So I always knew I wanted to go to Japan. So I was really intrigued by it just for like small things like the advanced technology and like the bullet train, and I was like interested in the vending machine culture. I was a freshman at the time, so I didn't really have like concrete reasons for wanting to go. But I was really attracted to my program. When I was researching programs, I learned that my university was the only university in Louisiana to offer a Japan program. So it was that aspect for me because I knew I didn't want to necessarily deal with a third party, just to make it easier to transfer grades and things like that. But what I really loved about my program is it was small and there was a lot of support. So one of the program coordinators, she actually attended and graduated from the university where we were taking courses at. Some of the alumni from the program, they still lived in Japan. Well, they ended up moving to Japan. There was a Facebook group with alumni, and there was also something called a Tamagotchi partner. So what that meant was we would spend a little time with students who volunteered their time with us, and we would spend time with them during lunch, and we would like, it was basically like an exchange of language and culture in a way. So that's what attracted me to the program.
Sorry, I was muted. Thanks so much for sharing, Alexis. And I think something in common that you guys kind of all shared your own unique experiences, but it just happened like Asia just has that pull, I think, to bring you in. Everyone's like nodding, like yes. So I just wanted to also see, like, as you were choosing, obviously you had very different experiences when choosing, whether it just happened because it was convenient, which is truly the case. Sometimes it works with your program or you do have that initial interest. But I just wanted to see, like, what are some strategies that, or maybe common misconceptions that you can like give advice for some of our attendees that are trying to decide maybe what country in Asia they're trying to go study abroad in, or like what to avoid when picking your country or program?
Yeah, I can take this one.
Mhm.
So my tip is to just obviously exhaust your study abroad office if you have one and if you can, um, or just use your network, right? See who's in your corner that can connect you to this office, or if your professor has experience in this experience, maybe they can, point you in some direction that can sort of parallel your interests in your region. And so in my case, I didn't use my study abroad office, and I just kind of hoped some of my friends could connect me to different places. And because I had done a study abroad program in Korea previously, I found the most pulled towards that direction again. And this time I was doing an internship, and I was also in another city. I was doing my Gilman in Seoul, where I'd done my previous studies abroad in Gwangju, so totally separate parts of the country. And so the misconception then is that you have to do a third party, or you have to do a formal connection program for your home university. Whereas if you have, if you're willing to put in the extra legwork, right, you can find other opportunities that might not be as immediate or as visible. You just have to sort of do like this DIY type planning, where you have to find your own housing, you have to find your own social activities because you don't have a study abroad coordinator, right? And so doing these extra steps can help match some of your goals for your study abroad program. If, say, there's a program that or a country that you're interested in going into, but your university might not have a formal partnership.
Okay, and I think like that's kind of a common response to kind of try to navigate, right? Trying to find your resources as well. I don't know, Hannah, if you have anything to add, like what are some common misconceptions that you experienced when trying to choose your program and what country? I know for Fulbright especially, because there are so many and they're each quite different.
Yeah, for sure. I would definitely echo what Jeremiah was saying. Lean on your resources. Like, I would not have been able to navigate the application process on my own had it not been for the folks in the Office of Merit Awards at my university that were helping me. So maybe look at your school, find out what that looks like there. You might not have like the exact equivalent office, but figure out, talk to the study abroad office maybe about the country that you're interested in going to. Just reach out to people and try to get that ball rolling as early as possible. Look at, if that office doesn't exist at your school, look at neighboring schools in the area or look at LinkedIn. So I would, definitely do all those. And I think that the one misconception I would love to touch on is avoid thinking too much about acceptance rates, because this is something that came up in my program and especially with the Office of Merit Awards for Fulbright ETA. Lots of times people will be Googling like the amount of people applying versus who gets accepted and stuff. But like when it comes to picking a country for why you're going, like really figure out your why. Because like you heard from the panelists here that were like, it started with this thing. There's no like wrong answer there, but it should be personal to you. And that's really sort of what they emphasized to me throughout my application process is if you figure out your why and it's true for you, it comes through in your applications. Like it's not going to matter how many other people are applying or what the rate is, et cetera. So like figure out what it is that's drawing you there specifically with like your experiences and follow that thread.
And I think, Hannah, you made a perfect point. Sometimes when we're looking for a lot of these programs, you look at the acceptance rate. I did that for every program that I applied to, even though I tried to push past it. I think that's our first tendency to be like, okay, I can do this. So it's definitely a great point. I don't know, Alexandra, Alexis, if you kind of wanted to have anything to add or touch on this.
Yes, I would say two factors I consider. One was the safety. So for me, one of the reasons why I chose Japan is because it's one of the safest countries in the world. So even like the police officers, like they don't carry guns, and if I'm not mistaken, they don't have guns at all there. So for me as a Black woman, like I felt comfortable. I knew I would feel comfortable like commuting around and just getting around. Like I knew I would feel safe there. I would say another thing to consider that I didn't necessarily consider is the language barrier. So for me, my program emphasized that you don't need to know Japanese in order to go, which is true because I survived just fine not knowing any at all. But also, while I was there, like I had moments where it's like I probably should have, researched a little bit more. But for me, I was lucky because like a part of our program, like they would explain to us like what different words are and kind of like how to identify certain words as well to know what buildings are and things like that. So I would say consider learning a little bit of the language, but more so knowing what you would want to say when you're there, not necessarily just from a textbook, or either consider learning a common language to use as a lingua franca, because I tried using Spanish and it didn't work.
Yeah, I don't know how far, though I will say that Spanish in Southeast Asia can get you some places. There's some common words. But yeah, I think that's a great point as well, is the language barrier for a lot of programs. Because like you said, not some programs don't necessarily require you to have a language. I know for Fulbright research in Malaysia, the language is not a requirement, which is quite shocking in a way, but if you're in the metropolitan city, it definitely isn't a requirement. So yeah, thank you, Alexis. And just wanted to kind of follow up on that. And for anyone, if they have any comments to this, so with like safety and language, was budgeting maybe a factor even in selecting Asia or your specific Asia country? Any insights or thoughts? Alexandra, maybe quite a little difficult since yours has been virtual so far. But I don't know if Jeremiah or Hannah, because you guys have like really traveled within Asia as well.
So it was. I had studied abroad in Gwangju, so it was a little bit more affordable compared to Seoul, right, the capital. And I really had, this time I was also like finding my own housing and doing my own social activities in Seoul, whereas in Gwangju, everything was sort of prepared for all the study abroad students. So in Seoul, when I was doing everything on my own, I really had to find, I really had to budget, right? Because it was far more expensive. And I was also commuting, whereas in Gwangju, I was biking everywhere. And so when I was in Seoul for my Gilman program, I was definitely planning, I had an Excel sheet. I kept every receipt. Like I was very meticulous about where my money was going, so that I could really maximize the award and of course have fun. And so budgeting was a different experience that I didn't have in Gwangju, because I didn't have a study abroad program to do all that for me, right? All these administrative tasks that brought me to my housing and my food and my studies, all this and that. And so I thought that the budgeting part was something I learned the second time around with the Gilman program.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, I think especially in my experience as a Fulbright researcher, they give us a set amount every month, and then it's really up on us to try to figure out how to use that money. So definitely, I think in Asia, you get away with it a little bit more compared to maybe some other countries. But actually, we're starting to get a few questions. So I just wanted to answer Mariana's first, especially since we have you, Jeremiah. It says that Mariana said, I have a lot of students interested in teaching English in China or Korea. Does anyone have knowledge or experience with that kind of work in addition to the programs you did yourself? Or what would you advise students interested in those kinds of programs? And I guess in that region, Jeremiah?
Yeah, sure. Let's see. So I would say, at least for Korea, there's, so I didn't formally teach English, but I have a lot of friends who did. And there's the formal like EPIC and talk program, the Teach and Learning Korea program. And those are, I think, government programs, but there's also private programs, and you go through other recruiters that aren't part of the government programs. And in other words, this is all to say that there are different ways to get into Korea through teaching. So your options are plentiful. My advice, just from what I've heard from my friends who had studied abroad, who had taught English in Korea, is to find which program matches your actual interests. Because from my understanding, the government programs have a little bit more social activities involved, right? So of course you're going to be teaching, but on weekends they have like excursions out to this part of the country. They have other opportunities where you can try more cultural exchange opportunities, where you can try different food or do this type of seasonal activity or something. So there's a little bit more, it's almost similar to a study abroad program, right? So you have your classes, but then you have weekends, you have these type of activities. I think in that case, the government programs have those type of opportunities embedded into their teaching experiences. The private programs where you just teach, I think you might have to do a little bit more of your own legwork into finding those outside extracurriculars, but a bunch of people teaching Korea. So having those options can help you navigate what is the best fit for you in your phase of your application. so that you can really put your best foot forward.
Yeah, and I think you made a great point. Like the program really does matter, especially so figure out your intent first for where you want to go, what exactly you want to get yourself in for maybe a year commitment. I think that's what some people don't realize. And maybe I'll throw the next question to Hannah since it touches. We had one question. So someone is trying to apply for a Fulbright ETA in India as opposed to South Korea, where they have extensive study abroad and teaching experience because they want to experience India's culture and immerse themselves in this kind of religious history. So will the Fulbright committee see this shift in interest as a good or bad thing, especially if the primary purpose of going to Korea was to study Korean through the Boren and CLS? So I don't know if you can just touch upon maybe what you've heard from other Fulbright ETAs on kind of their shift and your experience as an ETA.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say for Fulbright specifically, I have heard that having too much time, like either lived or visiting in the country of your interest, is sort of considered like a ding on your application. Like they're kind of looking for that growth. So as far as that goes, I can't specifically say necessarily like what Fulbright India, what their office might look for with that, but I will say they are looking for, people developing new interests. Like I said, as long as it's true to you and your reason, like why, that's really going to come through in your applications. So I think if you have a history of studying another language, that's awesome. And then if you are just starting to learn something new, or you're just, fascinated by this topic and you're kind of getting into it, that's also not a bad thing, right? Like they're encouraging that it is, the program is centered on like cultural exchange. So a big part of that is just, why are you excited about learning about this country, kind of. And that's not going to be, it's not going to be to your detriment, that you're interested in other places or other countries. Like it's like, what appeals to you about, that was kind of what the OMA kept telling me in my application. They're like, what is it about Malaysia for you? Like, I know you have all these other interests, and like you love the Philippines and you love this country, but like, what is it about Malaysia for you? So I would say with that, like, I don't think it would be considered a negative.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Hannah. And I just want to clarify for our attendees as well, something that Hannah said. I've also heard this, that it's a word of mouth, that Fulbright, it is quite a ding if you have too much in-country experience. It really depends on the host country, especially. But yes, this is something that is true for Fulbright, opposed to other programs where they really foster and want you to have that kind of background experience, like CLS or Boren, especially because CLS does have a language requirement for some of the languages. So maybe I'll throw it to Alexandra now, since you have a very unique experience having done CLS virtually for the Indonesia program this past year. Now you're going to do it for a second year. So maybe you can share what is something you wish you would have known before choosing your program or choosing Indonesian or CLS Indonesia.
Sure, yeah. Well, I'm sure I'm not alone in wishing that we all would have known that everything would have switched to online. But I guess something that I wish I would have known is more about the structure of the classes themselves. They were the first 2 weeks, maybe we were using 25-30% in English, and then we switched to all Indonesian, which was a very like awesome thing. And I think just knowing about like what are like the classroom procedures and just like the best way to prepare for class each day. But of course, sometimes it's just good to just like go with the flow and take it day by day. Knowing Indonesia, I know that I've heard that since it was in Malang, East Java, heavily populated Javanese, it is very Javanese centric. I know that sometimes accidentally addressed non-Javanese people as Mbak, which is like the respectful title for a young woman. But in general Indonesian, it's Kak. So that was a little bit of a mishap. But in general, that I took everything in stride and it all worked out. And yeah, it was just a great program and I look forward to doing it again.
Yeah, I think that's a great mantra to have for just study abroad in general. I think it's that go with the flow. Jeremiah's like also nodding. Yeah. So that's great to hear. I'm from a part of Indonesia that does not use mbak. So that's also true. So maybe I'll throw it to also Alexis to kind of share. So the program you did in Japan, it was through your university. So did it match your expectations? The program and the country, especially the country itself, or is there something you wish you would have known before choosing the program? And I think you touched on a few points already, but if you can elaborate.
I would say for me, in terms of the program, it met all of my expectations because my program coordinator was very detailed and organized. So nothing was new to me, or surprising to me for that matter. And I feel like even though I didn't know the language, for example, I was still prepared because they would give us like, ways to say thank you and things like that. So for me, there wasn't anything that I felt like I was unprepared for or that I wish I would have known in advance. Because again, you do go with the flow. I didn't spend a lot of time, for example, like studying certain things about the culture because I was really focused on like trying to apply for scholarships. And even though I got the Gilman, like I went during the summer, so I only got $2,500. So I had to come up with like thousands more for airfare and all of that. So that's where the bulk of my time was spent. But so again, I just ended up going with the flow with things when I did go to Japan, and because it was so tight knit, like we had different group activities that we did, so I didn't really feel like I was unprepared or like I was alone.
Okay, that's great. I think preparation is key. I remember when I applied to my own CLS program, I was heavily unaware of what was going to happen and didn't look too much into it, which so I had many surprises when entering the country. So very sad that you can also experience that, Alexandra, hopefully one day. So it's great to hear about everyone's kind of unique experience for how they choose their country or kind of what are some things to avoid. So maybe I'll just ask you all as well. So how did your country shape who you are and kind of where you are today? And how did this experience shape you? Or for Alexis, you're about to graduate. Where do you hope that it'll take you? So maybe I'll start with Hannah.
Yeah, Malaysia and Sarawak, more specifically, like the region of Malaysia that I was in, is an incredibly multicultural society. So they have Chinese, Buddhist, like Indian, Hindu, Malay, Muslim communities there. And all of those have their own sort of like culture of their own, like language, religious beliefs, food, etc. And seeing the ways in which those groups interacted with one another socially, just like how they either had positions in society that were either dominant or maybe more marginal at times, really cemented my interests coming from a background of sociology. And it for sure showed me that I would love to work in some capacity in the future with those different groups of people and different identities, especially those that might be on like the fringes of society. So right now I'm finding different ways to sort of apply that.
Thanks so much. Jeremiah, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, sure. Um, so for me, it really shapes how I view mobility. So if you're looking to study abroad, I encourage you to choose a program or a country where you probably couldn't go without a student visa, right? I think when I went, Korea was pretty popular, but now it's like even more popular. But without or with a student visa, you can go to a lot of other places that you probably couldn't go on a tourist visa. So find that like really just like find a place where you probably really just could not go without the student visa, and the tourist visa probably wouldn't get you as far. So for I see the question here about going to India, even though you had extensive study in Korea. I think that's such a great move because look, I'm in right now in Abu Dhabi in United Arab Emirates. I have zero connections to this country. I did not know I was going to come here for my first post. I think that with the student visa, it opens up a lot of opportunities. And so for me, how I kind of view where I am today is based off of choosing places that I have zero connections to that helps me sort of expand where I have already been, right? I could go back to South Korea. I could do a study abroad somewhere in East Asia or Southeast Asia, but there's value, right? There's nice parallels to my goals in other regions, which is actually why I wanted to go to Ghana or Brazil in the first place, because I wanted to see other parts that I really had no connection to once again, and also probably could not go to without that official student visa. So mobility is a key part of how I'm looking in choosing my next post or choosing how I can get to like my own personal travels, for instance. See how your options are opened with studies abroad through your student visa. And I really encourage you to have a conversation with your study abroad coordinator so that you can find a great match or find alternatives to your program or your options so that you can really hit those goals that you have.
Yeah, I think you made the perfect point actually. And I've also tried to share this view with some people that I know that are choosing study abroad, is that this is kind of the one time in your life where you can be like, I'm gonna go somewhere totally different. Totally like out of the blue, like no other chance that I could take a few months to go there. So yeah, I completely agree with that. So maybe I'll ask Alexis as well. So how did the country shape you, but also adding on just a little bit nuance to that. So when you first got to your country, like what adjustments did you really need to make, and how has that kind of changed any perceptions that you've had? Yeah, if you can kind of share along those lines.
So I'll firstly say I was in a way that I went out in my group, even though we were like a very diverse group, to take on Japan, because like I wasn't really like into anime and cosplay and things like that. Whereas most of my program participants, like they were. And I ended up learning while being in Japan, like it's not as like it's more common to do karaoke than it is to watch anime as a pastime. So it exposed me to karaoke culture. I didn't really get into it much when I was there because I was like really shy, but now all the time in my head, I'm like, I want to do karaoke. Like, I don't know what it is about being 14 that has made me want to do it, but I do. I would say the biggest adjustment for me, I almost had like a culture shock because I had to separate trash everywhere I went on campus, at my dorms, in public. So when you have trash, you have to like, your combustibles in one bin, your plastics in another, glass in another. So it was really, can you guys see me?
Yeah.
Okay. So it was really an adjustment for me to like be everywhere and have to like do that. And even like there aren't really many public trash cans in Japan because it's an initiative to like, not litter and make sure you throw away your trash. So for me, it was a culture shock coming back home to New Orleans where recycling isn't really taken as serious. And I think, to be honest, and not to bash America, but I don't feel like we take it as serious as they do in Japan. So it raised my awareness about that. Another thing I would say is it has made me want to learn Japanese. I just haven't like sat down and like really figured out the resources that are best for me to learn. One of my professors said to me, when we were on a train, he was like, it's really important to learn the hard languages like Japanese. You really need to learn like a critical need language. Like it's great to learn Spanish and French, but everyone's learning that. So really try to learn a critical need language. And lastly, I'll say one way it shaped me is like, that was my first time abroad. So for me, it's like, of course I would love to go abroad again, but we are in a pandemic, unfortunately. But I have applied to be a USA Youth Pavilion ambassador for the World Fair in Dubai. So I'm hoping to get that because that will be my post-grad plans.
Yeah. No, and I think that's a great point. As somebody who's done the critical language scholarship, and Alexandra can also attest to this, and Jeremiah actually as well with Korean, it's really important that these languages are also known and awareness is spread. Even just having experience and trying to learning a few phrases and things like that really is a lot. So yeah, I'll now go to Alexandra. Just share a little bit about how doing this program has shaped you, your interest maybe in the region, or how you see yourself moving forward.
Oh, absolutely. This program, obviously, it definitely increased my interest in the region. Even though I didn't physically go there, I feel more connected to Indonesia and Southeast Asia in general. I definitely learned so much. Everyone was so welcoming. We had a good rapport within our group, with our language partners, and we definitely made time for special events. A theme that was prevalent throughout was music, what kind of popular music we liked. We listened to and sang traditional music. I just feel so much more connected and so motivated to continue on my journey learning Indonesian. And I hope one day to travel there and and hopefully, you know, Filipinos, Indonesians, Malaysians, Americans, we can all learn about each other more through the power of language, which is, of course, the purpose of CLS. So, yeah.
Yes, thank you. Trust me, you will not be disappointed if you go to Indonesia. I'm clearly very biased. So, but I also just wanted to kind of ask the panel to just one more question, kind of thinking back to what motivated you to choose your language or choose your country program. Like, what was the thing, or who was the person that influenced you? Was it a language class, or was it a school teacher, and kind of like how this has shaped your view? Yeah, you can share, Jeremiah, if you can start us off.
Yeah, sure. So I chose, so the first time I went to Korea, I chose Korea um, because some other funding didn't go through for my first choice, which was to go to Japan, actually. It was Japan and Philippines. So I applied to 2 programs and some more, and that just didn't work out. And so Korea, I had 0 experience in. I knew nothing at the time. And again, this was all results from not being able to go to 2 other programs that I initially applied to. And therefore I chose Korea on a whim. I, again, had no friends who had visited the region. I myself am not ethnically Korean. And so this kind of goes back to my point earlier about choosing a place where you just really have no connection to. And I ended up having an amazing experience. I stayed in Korea, and then I went back to Korea for my Gilman. I chose it because of this really on a whim decision, this really just a shot to the dark kind of decision. And so I ended up loving it and staying because I found that a lot of what I wanted to do in Philippines or Japan, I could do in Korea. So language exposure, it connected to my personal goals. And it was so different, just so contrastingly different from what I was exposed to, that I found that, the ways I had prepared for my expectations could be found in other opportunities. So this is all to say that if something doesn't work out, or funding doesn't go through, or a program doesn't work out in terms of acceptance rates, finding ways to pivot can only make your study abroad program all the more richer, right? I would totally go back to Korea if I could. And I encourage you all to see how these small pivots really can, as a whole, make an experience really beautiful and build these skills that you just really can't learn in the classroom, right? I really did not know how many times I was going to rewrite my essays, or how many times I would have to, get rejected, and how that pointed me into places that still, again, brought me to where I wanted to be. Maybe different culture, of course, different language, but it still hit all the right notes. I had a bunch of benchmarks and milestones that I set forth for myself that I encourage you to make before you study abroad, so that as you are going through your program, you find these small pivots that are helping you achieve those goals.
I think those are phenomenal points. So I just want to be cognizant of time. We have just a few more minutes. So I'll just ask Hannah to kind of share just what was your initial inspiration and like what was your first thought about when you decided to pursue going to Malaysia or maybe even taking on a country or a language? I mean, you took on a country too, don't get me wrong. But who influenced you and how did you get there? Just sharing little bits before we head off.
Yeah, for sure. I didn't know what to expect at all with my time abroad. Like, one of the things that is like an ongoing joke in the ETA program is like we're English teachers, but we're also so many other like random occupations. Like some of the jobs I did included like coaching a drama team, volleyball teacher. I was like sort of like a mentor, older sibling figure to a lot of my students. And basically just like every job under the sun that I could not have anticipated. So one of the key things I guess I would like prospective applicants to take away with this is just a sense of flexibility is like the number one thing I would say. And I'm sure that all the other panelists would agree that that's like if you have flexibility, you know, and the ability to roll with the punches and all of that, you're gonna do great. Um, and in terms of like inspiration for going, talk to anybody and everybody you can think of that might have a connection to your country. That could be, you know, like I said, the Office of Merit Awards at my school was really helpful. Also, a professor in the School of International Studies. I was not even in that school, but I was like, I know that you have a connection to Malaysia, so I'm gonna come to your office hours and like try to pick your brain. Anissa went to my school. She also knew about Malaysia. So I was like, can you just answer my questions about like, what's the school system like, that kind of thing. And another student at our school. So I would definitely say that's something that I even could have done more of having reached out to people. But if you're interested in doing a program, find someone who's done that program and just ask them all of your questions. Like that information is readily available online. Your school probably has a database too for, you know, who's completed that program at your school. And I can tell you from people that have done these programs, we are happy to answer your questions. So just like go online, find a person and just be like, hey, can you find a couple minutes to talk to me?
Thanks so much, Hannah. And I think the important perspective is that really try to, like, if you're motivated enough to learn a language, find a program and get scholarships for it. I can't hesitate, like, emphasize enough, like, I would not have been able to go to Indonesia had I not gotten one of these scholarships or even spend a year in Malaysia. So there are definitely ways and resources to do this. So you just got to find them. They're out there. It's a little difficult for some things, but I'm sure if you do a lot of digging, you can find it. So yes, I just wanted to close up. Sorry, Alexandra and Alexis, I didn't get to you, but I will say if any attendees want to reach out, please feel free. I've put my email in the chat and Hannah has, and I believe Jeremiah has as well. Yes. So if anyone has any further questions, please feel free to reach out to any of us, LinkedIn. And attendees, there will be a survey at the end of this panel so that you can be put in for the raffle, and panelists as well. So if you guys haven't done so, please stay on so that you can take that survey. Okay, well, I'm going to close us off. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Thank you to the panelists for sharing your stories. It's amazing to hear from so many different perspectives and programs. But yeah. Thank you so much, everyone. Oh,